If you like the sweet science, get ready to talk boxing on the Gloved Fist podcast with top boxing writers Frank LOTIERZO and Jack Hirsch. Frank, a former amateur boxer out of Philadelphia, writes for NY Fights and can be seen on the Boxing Channel. Jack, an amateur boxer who competed in the New York Golden Gloves, was a 6-term president of the Boxing Writers Association. And now, here's Frank LOTIERZO and Jack Hirsch.
And we're back. Welcome to Glove Fist. My name is Frank LOTIERZO, former writer, try to be full-time observer, joined by former 6-term president of the Boxing Writers Association of America. Jack, you are the quarterback tonight, although you're always the quarterback, but you are really the starter tonight because I am battling a terrible sore throat. So even if you say that Ken Norton could knock the hell out of Ron Lyle, I'm not going to fight it.
Well, I defer such matters to Lyman Pauly. Did I pronounce his name right? Okay, because who knows a lot more about boxing than us two, and that's what he says would happen. So his word is good enough for me, but that's the best medicine to clear your sore throat. A quick happy birthday to Michael Spinks. It's his birthday today. You know, you mentioned the word quarterback, kidding around, but that's a segue because we were talking a little before the show, Frank, about the poll that just came out, the top 10 NFL quarterbacks as rated by executives, coaches, and scouts.
Current quarterbacks.
Currently. We also have a top 10 in boxing, and it got me to thinking, you know, the last couple of minutes, are we rating the top 10 in boxing the way we should? Are we rating it on who we think is better? Or do you rate it on accomplishments? Because if you look at the poll of top 10 NFL quarterbacks, Jalen Hurts, who's played in 2 Super Bowls, played really well, was an MVP of 1, you know, recently. He wasn't in the top 10. Sam Darnold, the Super Bowl winning quarterback, who's had 2 really good seasons in a row, he wasn't in the top 10. So should those guys have been in the top 10 based on accomplishments? And are we doing pound for pound listings the right way in boxing? Is it accomplishments, or who do we think is better than who? Because I'll tell you, if we're looking at boxing, the top guys, some people still might have Usyk number 1, even though I think he lost that position based on his subpar performance against Rico Haravan, okay? But based on accomplishments and nothing more, Usyk should still remain in that position. But logically, if you look at what a guy has left now, should we keep him in there out of obligation, or should we deal with reality, Frank?
Jack, that's what I don't like about the pound for pound list, because it goes day to day, and no one in our lifetime has defined, is it the best overall fighter or the most accomplished? I have always gone by who I think the best overall fighter is, the most complete fighter, offense, defense, ring generalship, movement, the whole bit. That's what I go by. Accomplishment, that's also subjective. I mean, you have to say that Usyk is one of the more accomplished guys right now, and so is Inoue. I mean, I guess Canelo would be in there. I don't know if Canelo is one of the top 5 fighters.
Inoue's been fairly active, so his accomplishments are pretty much there. But, you compare Shakur Stevenson to Usyk. Shakur Stevenson very graciously said after he beat Teofimo, no, he's not the top pound for pound guy. He still has to defer to Usyk based on what Usyk has accomplished compared to him. That was very gracious of Shakur at the time. But at this moment, one guy is on the rise at his peak, Shakur Stevenson, and the other guy, maybe he just had a bad night, whatever, but he got the W, he got the stoppage at the end of the day. So statistically speaking, you can't take anything away from Usyk per se, but logically, should he be the top guy? I mean, how do you put him ahead of David Benavidez? I mean, if we look at peak value, it would be Benavidez at this moment. I'm no particular order. Benavidez, Stevenson, maybe in a way you could, throw in there in the mix. But there's a difference between peak value and accomplishments to an extent.
Jack, don't you think the guys who usually are at the top of the list are the more versatile boxers? Like, you mentioned Benavidez. He has a good resume, and it's kind of hard to picture him losing right now. But he's a guy that can only do it one way. He has to attack. Where a guy like Stevenson,
doesn't matter.
Usyk, they can box and they can morph into any style they need to.
Doesn't mean a thing. As long as they get the job done within their style, it doesn't mean a thing. A guy like Smoking Joe Frazier basically fought one way. Okay, we know.
And it worked every time except against one guy.
Okay, against one guy. I mean, yeah, but it's what it is. You're not gonna put you're not going to put a Jerry Quarry ahead of him. Let's say they never fought because he could move forward and punch. And he
because Joe has the better wins. I mean, there's a lot more into it, but I just always have gone with the guy who I just felt could win multiple ways. And as much as I love the attackers like Frazier and Benavidez, I've always favored them. I'm not saying it's carte blanche, but I mean, Shakur brings more to the ring than David Benavidez. I hate to say it, but he does.
Speaking of Shakur, there was a noteworthy signing. He signed with Super Boxing. And
as I told you, they were going to be a factor.
But no, Super Boxing is going to be a big factor. Whether they take over or not the sport, they're not going to take over the sport unless they want to lose a ridiculous amount of money. If they want to lose a ridiculous amount of money, if the Saudis back Dana White and they're going to throw away $1 billion per se, yeah, you could win out, but that's a suicidal mission. They don't really win per se. But Stevenson signs with Super Boxing now. But now this is the problem. They got to get him guys to fight, and he's still not a major draw. I don't want to see him fight Shaki Foster.
He's not a major draw. You're right.
He's not. So what did they? So Ryan Garcia supposedly is going to be in with Conor Benn. Okay, if Garcia wins that fight, you could put him in with Shakur, and Garcia, for whatever reason, is tremendously charismatic. Okay, Frank, it's all about brands. It's not about, it's only partly about accomplishments. If you have a strong enough brand, you can keep bringing a guy back over and over, and the people will turn out. The same people, for the most part, who complained about the Mayweather-Pacquiao fight being a dud, starting too late, they felt they got ripped off. You want to know something? 75% of them would have been back for a rematch and paid the same money at least.
Jack, you talk about brand, and you're right. And I know you're going to push back on this, and I am just not up to fighting you on it. But let me just say this. What Shakur Stevenson should do is he should book a flight to Mayweather's house and ask him about how to build a brand. Because to me,
he's done it already. He's talked with Floyd. They're friends.
Okay. Well, then what he has to do is he has to become abrasive, loud, ugly, truculent, recalcitrant. He has to start walking around with cases of money and says, who has beat me? Who can beat me? Nobody has beat me. And he has to trade on that O like Floyd did. Because, Jack, I'm an old man, and I've seen a lot of boxing in the last 65 years. And I'm telling you, I never raced to the theater to see Mayweather fight one time. Did I watch him? Yes. Was I excited about it? Because he managed himself great. His fights were never exciting. He was basically, after 130 pounds, he was basically all defense with a couple counters, and that was it. Shakur is kind of that guy. We saw the argument that he had with Shannon Sharp, and Shannon Sharp was basically saying to him, you're not exciting. And he's exciting for hardcore guys that like the defense and whatnot. But unless you have some panache and a brand like Mayweather did, nobody's going to pay you much mind.
I have mixed feelings about Shakur Stevenson, not as a fighter. As a fighter, I think he's a great fighter. I think he has the hardest, most difficult style to solve in all of boxing, okay? That's why I don't think he's going to get beat for a while. His style is kind of in the Pernell Whitaker, Floyd Mayweather.
Right.
They shut opponents down. That's what they do best. They shut them down. And if you could take them out of their style and make them fight more wide open, that's the key to beating them. But
that's hard to find a guy that can do that, Jack, because it takes physicality to do that. And those guys were stronger than people think, because they weren't life takers as punchers. They were strong. I've always said Floyd was physically stronger than he got credit for. Same thing with Mayweather. And we've seen guys with Stevenson who try to rough him up, and they just can't do it because he's strong.
Yeah, we saw William
physically strong.
Tried to do it a couple of fights ago. But the mature
which is what I was thinking of.
I'm going to get in a moment to the argument he had with Shannon Sharp. The part I like about Shakur Stevenson, they asked him a couple of years ago about how important it is to retire unbeaten. He said, not important at all. He says, fighters lose fights, okay? I want to, if I want the best fights and to fight the toughest guy, it's possible, I could lose. But I want to test myself. I don't want to just stay unbeaten.
I don't believe him when he says that, Jack. But
okay, but that's what he said a couple of years ago, and I know at that time he was searching for a big fight. But a part of me too, this is what bothers me with Shakur Stevenson. Two things. His big fight possibly, and I don't think it's going to happen. He thinks it will be maybe against Devin Haney. They've been talking. And Shakur says, well, it'll be at 144 pounds. And Shakur's saying, well, he shouldn't even be fighting a junior welterweight because he says, I can still make lightweight comfortably. That's what he said. I don't go for that. Fighting a 144, fight a 147, or if it's a catch weight fight, I don't want to hear about any title being on the line. Any fight is good to make between named guys. If there's no title on the line, I'm never going to object. For example, in a couple of weeks, Christian Prenga fights Anthony Joshua. I don't want to hear anyone criticize the fight. No title is on the line. It's not like Prenga's been given a title shot. So don't tell me he's not worthy. He's absolutely worthy to have a fight like that where there's no title on the line. Okay? And Shakur, he's playing with these pounds. And even though I feel the modern fighters are better in the sense that they're more athletic, they've had an extensive amateur background. You might say, well, they haven't had many pro fights. But guys like Lomachenko, Usyk, the amount of tough amateur fights they had, believe me, means more than easier pro fights. Then, someone will have an additional 30, 40 pro fights at the beginning of their career. That's just my view because they're going against world-class amateurs like they were at the time. And they've been boxing since they've been kids, as well. But I don't like this catch weight stuff. Anytime there's a catch weight, a title shouldn't be on the line. Another thing, Frank, you grew up in the era, as I did, with 8 weight divisions, okay? The junior welterweight existed, the junior middleweight, yeah, you could add those on, but no one took them seriously. I remember Carlos Ortiz told me when he won the world junior welterweight title, it didn't mean anything to him at all because it wasn't one of the prestigious titles. Now you listen to these guys talk saying, oh, I'm the junior welterweight champion of the world. Think of the words, junior welterweight. You're not even a legitimate welterweight champion. That's like the Knicks. If the Knicks hadn't won the NBA championship, they won the Commissioner's Cup. Could you imagine that celebrating with the banner? Oh, we're the Commissioner Cup champions.
Or like the Lakers won the in-season tournament. Who cares about that?
The next one, this season, the in-season, I'm a little confused. I thought
a few years ago, LeBron tried to claim that they won the in-season tournament.
Yeah. But the thing with Shannon Sharp, so he said to Shakur Stevenson, you're a great fighter. I'm not questioning how good you are at all, but you're kind of boring. And listen, he wasn't wrong, but I'm not condemning Shakur. Shakur's doing what he has to do. The name of the game, hit, don't be hit. Just keep winning. Let me tell you, in 1983, Frank, I was in the offices and I was for 2.5 hours. Someone introduced me to him. I met him the first time at Jim Jacobs, fight film collector.
I used to buy fights from him.
You used to buy fights. There you go. Okay. And who later, gained more fame as Mike Tyson's co-manager. Tyson would turn pro, what was it, 85. Okay.
March of 85.
Yeah. And Jim Jacobs and myself got into a debate. And I told him it's all about winning. That's all that matters. You win. And Jacobs would be arguing with me. You have to entertain. A fighter can't just win. He has to be entertaining. And that's at least half right. You have to be entertaining. And Shakur Stevenson, to his credit, to his vast credit, the fight before Teofimo Lopez, he went toe-to-toe with William Cepeda. He left his normal style to entertain, and he outfought Cepeda, beat Cepeda, pretty good fighter, was fighting Lamont Roach next month, by the way, in a good fight. He beat him at his own game. But now Stevenson against Teofimo went back to his old style, but he was still somewhat aggressive. So Stevenson, to me, I wouldn't quite label him a boring fighter. I've seen him fight enough times. But he's certainly not an exciting fighter.
No, he's not boring, Jack. And he does he does enough to win. And if you push him, he can go flat-footed and he can trade and he can punch harder than people say. But he just doesn't have that dazzling, that kill shot like Crawford had, or like Leonard had, or like Hearns had. But I think when we see him in with better people, he'll be pushed a little bit more. I mean, look, I can't blame him for not going head to head with Lopez. That was Lopez's fight. So what he did was he picked his spots and he boxed his ass off. And it's like he did what he's supposed to do.
And the entertainment part, you want a fighter to look spectacular in a certain sense. That's why people love Sugar Ray Robinson. He'd have a lot of moments where he'd look spectacular. It's like the baseball, that the All-Star game is tomorrow. Let's be honest about it. Who would you rather see at bat? Pete Rose and Mickey Mantle? I mean, they're not playing tomorrow night, but you know what I mean. What would you rather see? A guy who doesn't hit home runs, who's a 400 hitter, let's say the next 400 hitter, or Aaron Judge? You'd rather see Aaron Judge. Doesn't mean.
You're basically right, but Rose is my all-time favorite player. So I just like watching Rose work the pitcher. So in that case, I'd go with Rose. But I know what you're saying. It's like the home run hitters always got the big contracts. They were the stars. And Jack, if you look at boxing, how many guys that weren't punchers were big stars? Ali? Who else? Who else?
Who would not punch? Well, Willie Pep. Famous fighter, during his era. Yeah, he was amazing.
I mean, he's but was he a big star and draw back then? He was.
Yeah, Willie absolutely was. And I'll give you a case in point. I was in the 1990s what was it, 93, I think it was, when De La Hoya fought Julio Cesar Chavez.
Right.
I was in Canastota for Hall of Fame weekend. And I got to watch it with the fighters who they brought into this big ballroom, the closed circuit showing. And the commentator said, De La Hoya says he wants to be like this guy and like Willie Pep. And everyone looked at Pep, and Pep went like that. But just the idea, Pep's name evoked great things in the past. But you know what it is, Frank? With anything else in sports, when decades go by and the old guard leaves the earth and the new guard comes in, it becomes faded in most cases. Now, sometimes you might get a legend that's going to pass the test of time in a crazy way, but other legends are going to fade out. I even wonder is Ali's star going to fade out a bit?
It will eventually, Jack.
It will. It will. It started with Mike Tyson. People would ask, "Oh, who's better? Who would have won, Ali and Tyson?"
I think that's died, but Ali's star will die eventually, but he'll still last longer than anybody else because he had the big fights and he had the opponents. And to a degree, when we talk about Mayweather and Stevenson, you know, Mayweather, even though he fought them, I think at the opportune time on his side, he had the names. See, Shakur, how many names does he have out there that he can really fight? We could stretch and name 4 or 5. Mayweather had 15.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, for the people listening, we're going to have a guest soon coming on, Ricardo Salazar, former fighter. He does the programs, you know, for big fights. This is one from the Boxing Writers Association of America's.
Jack, I used to be a big collector of those, and I still have a bunch of programs for big fights back in the day.
And Michaela Mayer on the cover. Yeah, let me ask you this, Frank, and I maybe should save this for Ricardo. Ricardo basically, you know, does covers as told, or the BWAA summons someone else for cover, and Ricardo puts together the journal, has done a great job. We talk about equal rights in society. Should a woman necessarily be given equal rights on the cover like Michaela Mayer and Terence Crawford? I was a bit skeptical of it, but, you know, I guess I was voted down on that. No disrespect to Michaela Mayer. If a woman has had an astounding career, maybe like Katie Taylor, and this is her farewell, you know, okay, but whatever.
If she gets her own merit, Jack, I don't have a problem with it, as long as it's not like a gimme for just because she's a female or whatever.
Well, but that's what I'm asking you. Michaela Mayer, should she have shared the cover with Terence Crawford, who is male?
My inclination is no.
Yeah, okay, that's basically. Listen, Wimbledon this year, Serena Williams came back. To me, she was the top draw by far, including Jokic, okay? She was the star, and I thought she should have been given top billing. There's such a way. Oh, just before we have a guest. So Shakur Stevenson is mad at Shannon Sharp. And he says to Shannon Sharp, you're ignorant. It's not personal. You're ignorant when it comes to boxing.
Yeah, he said, you never box, so what do you know? You play football.
I mean, that would be telling me I can't have an opinion on football. Outside of 2 games in the Pee Wee League when I was playing, I got no active football experience. I don't count intramurals in college. Okay.
You know, it's funny, Jack. Some of the top analysts in both sports never played. So I don't think that's a valid. I mean, it was Shakur's only default. That was the first thing that came to his mind. So he wanted to rip Shannon. I understand that, and I'm not the biggest Shannon Sharp fan, but I think he's somewhat of a fair interviewer, and I don't think he was being unfair in that. And I thought Shakur got ugly, but look. We run into this all the time. Look, some of the guys whose opinions I value the most when it comes to this sport never trained in a gym, never had a single amateur fight or anything. Some people just have that aptitude and they know it. And it's the same thing with football. I never played football at a high level, but I think I'm pretty good at evaluating and judging it. I don't think you have to be a player to automatically be an expert. I just think sometimes being a player gives you a dimension that somebody that can't have.
It could. It depends on the situation. But I also know after the Williams-Cepeda fight, Shakur Stevenson was cursing people out during the interview generically. They're like people are haters because they picked against them. So if he was with me now, I'd
Who
say
picked against them? I've never heard anybody pick against them.
Yeah, but I would say who question them. So I would say to him, wait a second, Shakur, if I pick Devin Haney to beat you, which I'm not going to do, by the way, I don't think Haney's even going to take the fight.
No.
And I'd say to him, does that make me a hater? Are you going to curse me afterwards? I mean, you want to show me and prove me wrong, but don't start cursing me out and yelling at me afterwards. You don't know a darn thing. I mean, you could do it in a fun way. Look what Ali did after he beat Foreman. He was in his dressing room giving a lecture.
Don't ever bet against me. Make me the underdog and tell me about 50. But Ali could do it, Jack, and it was funny. He wasn't mean.
Yeah.
Shakur did not come off good with Shannon Sharp.
Mean-spirited.
Not at all. Shannon looked much better in that interview than Shakur did. It was not a good look for Shakur, in my opinion.
No, I don't think Shakur probably has any
he cares.
ill feelings, but Shakur is very mature, normally just talking to him about things and, about opponents. He doesn't like trash talking. He likes to talk level-headed. Like if someone's trying to fight Shakur and they'll say, look, I think you're a great fighter, Shakur, but I maybe see some things I could take advantage of. It's easier said than done. Shakur would listen and say, yeah, I mean, you got to execute. Like he would have a conversation. He wouldn't get defensive. A guy like Boots Ennis gets a little defensive now. Ennis finally praised Zayas afterwards. He said a number of nice things about him, but some guys have like a hard time.
We better be careful with Ennis, Jack.
Yeah.
There's a good place in Merchantville, New Jersey, has cheesesteaks. And Ennis has been there 5 times, I saw, since the fight. He's eating a cheesesteak, so he's going to be a middleweight soon.
Yeah, okay, listen, he is growing. I think he is going to be the number 1 star in boxing at some point. He'll beat Virgil Ortiz, maybe a Sebastian Fondura, whatever. And
Jack, I have guys texting me and emailing me, asking me if I think that Terrence Crawford's going to come out and fight him.
Oh man. Well, just one quick thing, I'll answer. For our producer, Brian on, when our guest comes on, just bring him into the studio, even if it's in the middle of the conversation, okay? I hope not for Crawford's sake, because you take punches. Could the money be made so ridiculously big for Crawford that he's going to figure, like, what the hell? They're giving me like $250 million? And let's say he turns that down and they give him like $300 million and they're giving Boots $50 million.
Well, what would happen, Jack, if Crawford had a press conference and he said, I'm going to fight one more time. I'm going to fight Ennis at 160. How big of a fight do you think? Would that be the biggest fight they could make in the sport?
Has Ennis quite gotten up to the point of a super mega fight attraction? I question that. Crawford, and I'm going to tell you this, Frank. If you prorate them, Ennis and Crawford, they're not as big as Duran and Leonard when they fought the first time, and the business has changed. I just don't see it. Crawford still hasn't quite transcended boxing. Leonard transcended it. It took
Leonard was more of a personality, Jack. What Crawford has done in the ring, I think, transcends fans where they want to see him. But it's got to be the right guy. But I just don't know, even if it's Boots, if that's the right guy and how big it would be. Because as Crawford said, it's a lose-lose for me. If I beat him, they'll say, he wasn't ready. He was young, didn't have enough fights.
Not so much now, Frank. I think people recognize how good Boots is. But you'd still have a point. There's still an avenue where Crawford wouldn't get full credit because they'd say, look, Boots was hurt against Zayas. That was the red flag. We should have seen it, and it's best for Crawford to just stay retired.
I hope he doesn't come out of retirement.
Yeah, I mean, if he came out of retirement and lost, it would hurt his legacy.
It would. It shouldn't, but it would.
What gets me too is, and once again, top producer, as soon as Ricardo Salazar comes into the studio, let him in. These promoters, they keep talking about legacy, and Eddie Hearn makes me laugh. He's saying in front of Boots Ennis. Boots is all about legacy. He knows the money will come late on. You know what I want to see, Frank? A fighter sitting with a promoter like Eddie Hearn and saying, to me, it's about the money. The legacy will come later. I'll gain in my legacy before my career's over. It's the money that I'm after now. That's what, that's what I want to see. I love the
Jack,
way
let's
they
touch real quick before our guest comes on.
Come on,
Does,
yeah.
does Spence fight next week? Is it next week?
The 25th. Oh, the Zone signed, the PBC signed with the Zone. So if you subscribe to the Zone, it might not be a pay-per-view event. I think we might.
Now, Jack,
get
I'm
that.
looking right now on Boxing Scene, and it says Amazon Prime pay-per-view for Spence and Zoo, July 25th.
But they signed. It's supposed to be on the Zone. I mean, if the PBC signed with the Zone, they've got to provide that fight to the Zone. Why would the Zone want them otherwise, right? So I think that might be updated. I'm not sure. I mean, it's not going to be on the unless they're pulling a fast one, the Zone. They contracted to provide one pay-per-view show a month, and they might be saying that Joshua Pranga's their pay-per-view, and this other one they can charge for.
Now, Joshua Pranger is listed on the Zone, Jack. It says the Zone. Spence says Amazon Prime.
Joshua Pranger, has a couple of other fights for belts on there. It's going to be starting like about 10:30 in the morning, but Joshua Pranger won't come on till about 5, 6 o'clock, Eastern
And
time.
Tyson Fury, when's his fight going to start?
Okay, yeah. Oh, okay, we got our guest on, Frank. Ricardo Salazar. Ricardo, I'm thinking the best introduction for you. And I compared you to a baseball player who plays a lot of different positions, a lot of different positions in all ways. Former fighter, good amateur, had a decent pro career, not a long one. The highlight was actually a loss, but it was against a world champion, and it was by decision to Jake the Snake Rodriguez. And the programs, you put out, you manage fighters. I want you to tell us about, the management end of it. And your better half, your wife, works for the IBF. So you have to be up on the news in the IBF, even though you might not say it, you're up on the news with that. So welcome to the show. And here's my co-host. I don't know whether you've ever met him, Frank LOTIERZO.
How you doing, Ricardo? I'm a little under the weather tonight, so the floor is yours.
Thank you. Nice to meet you, Frank. I haven't had the pleasure of meeting you, but Jack, I've always been very, very appreciative of the opportunity, some of the opportunities that I have received in the sport of boxing through Jack. But as he said, my boxing has been my life. There you go.
On the program, this is how Ricardo puts out these programs.
Yeah, one of the things that my first trainer, who a lot of people never heard of him, his name was Juancho Ruiz. He was a good Panamanian fighter, and he was a great trainer. He always said to me, "You always have to carry 2 suitcases of boxing: the ones of success and the one of failure. Not failure, but just in case you don't make it in boxing." And that always stuck with me because, obviously, we have seen it through the years how boxing is. It's just it's a brutal sport, And not just in the ring, but also in a lot of people don't get the opportunities that you think are deserving, and so I always make sure that I try to stand out where if I didn't make it, I will get an opportunity to do something in the business because boxing has been my life. I love the sport. It's funny that you mentioned about my wife because I always wanted to say we're a boxing family, but I didn't really mean it. But now I do mean it because it's in the family. My wife has a high-profile position in the IBF. She is the right-hand woman, and she's really, really involved. As a matter of fact, she's being inducted into the International Women's Boxing Hall of Fame.
Oh, congratulations.
And I'm like, wow, I can't even say it about myself.
Yeah.
Boxing has been something, it's been a sport that has been dear to me. I did I never really stepped away from the sport. I never have. A lot of people have only known me as a boxing person, but in the last 20 years, when we started a family, I said boxing is just too unpredictable at times, and I can be making good money now, and then the next 6 months, the phone call is not ringing as much as as I expected it. So I took a job and I became the marketing director for the entertainment company Medieval Times, as Jack knows. And I was there almost 14 years. And it was a job that I thought that would be temporary, until another big boxing gig will come along. But I ended up loving it. I ended up loving my position with Medieval Times, to the point where it competed my love for boxing. Not really, but close. And then another opportunity came, and that was to be the head of tourism for the city. So here I was, an executive, having an executive position, and but boxing was always very close. As a matter of fact, when I took the position in Newark as the head of tourism, I make sure that boxing was part of it.
Are you still in that position?
No, I stepped down last year. It became a little bit too political. They, the city decided to take over the agency, and it really bothered me because we were a private nonprofit, and for the local government to say we're going to take over the agency, they had no rights. But so they did some they made some decisions that were borderline legal, and they took over the agency, and I was not going to be part of that. So I stepped away. That's been over a year now. And so it's funny because I said I always wanted boxing to be what provided for me. And for the last 20 years, it wasn't. And until I made it so, so I have a small space in Dumbo, Brooklyn. It's where I call my sanctuary. I have a small boxing studio. I do all my programs there. I do my lobbying for my fighters, the fighters that I represent, and everything's boxing now. So I'm enjoying it.
This is in Brooklyn.
It's in Brooklyn. Yeah, it's in Brooklyn.
Wow, I mean New Jersey to Brooklyn. I mean, couldn't you get something closer to home or what?
Well, it's funny because I'm a person that I go a lot by signs, right? So I get signs of to do something. The initial idea was to do it in New Jersey, but the opportunity came in Brooklyn, so I took it.
What part of Brooklyn?
It's called Vinegar Hill, but it's actually 1 block away from Dumbo, so I call it Dumbo.
Is that by Park Slope?
It's near Park Slope. It's about 12 minutes from Park Slope. It's actually it's near.
You anywhere near Gleason's gym?
Yes. It's very near to Gleason's gym. As a matter of fact, it's on the same street.
Yeah. Oh, okay. There you go.
But we're no competition. It's not a competition. I love Bruce Silverglade. I trained there for years when Teddy Atlas was my trainer, and this is completely different. This is more of a private setting, one-on-one type of thing, very private. It's not very big. So it's not really made for fighters. It's made more for people that want to take boxing lessons and learn how to defend themselves. It's not. It's not for athletes. Yeah.
Your own pro career. I mean, it didn't come out the way you wanted it to, but you had a degree of success. It depends on how you interpret success. One of the things you did was fight on the undercard of several big shows, several well-known fighters. Could you tell us about a couple of the undercards that you were on, what you remember about it, not just your fight, but the buzz of being part of it? Because I know myself, if I was old enough at the time or whatever, and I boxed amateur, never pro, but if I could have gotten on the first Ali Frazier show, a 4-round, I would have paid the promoters money. I would have, not stolen, but you know what I mean, just to get on there for 4-round. I would have gotten a few $1,000. Just get me on there. I get stopped in 1 round. It's okay. You feel you're part of history. Tell us about the big show.
So yes. So number one, I tell you, and we're mentioning Gleason's, and before I tell you about that, if you allow me,
sure.
When I was an amateur on the Teddy Atlas, I was a good amateur. I beat every Golden Gloves champion in my era that was from New York, but I never fought in the New York Golden Gloves, right? I beat Sean Daughtry, Sean Knight, that became an Olympian.
Wow.
Gennaro Andujar, who won the Golden Gloves twice. I beat those guys. I just never fought in the New York Golden Gloves because I was a New Jersey resident. But one of the things was being a top amateur was that I was able to represent the United States in different countries. I went all over Europe,
Oh, wow. Okay.
and I always tell people, you have to be able to back it up, but also you also have to be connected. My connection was the Silverglade family, right? So Ed Silverglade was at one point was part of the IOC. And so whenever there was a team they were putting together, I was lucky enough to be in it. I traveled with Bo. I traveled with Kevin Kelly, who became world champion. I traveled with some very, very good with Joey Gamache. He was my roommate when we took a cruise from Sweden all the way to Helsinki to fight the Finnish team there. So I had a lot of great memories as an amateur. And then as a pro, I happened to turn pro at Madison Square Garden. That was anybody's dream to fight, at one point in Madison Square Garden. My pro debut was there. But when you talk about big cards, the one that I recall was in Atlantic City, and it was Holyfield against Michael Dokes, if I remember correctly. That was my second professional fight. And it was an HBO fight, and it was right before the main event. So I was a swing bout, right? So the swing bout happened to be right before the main bout, and it was just packed, at the convention hall. And it was funny because I dropped the guy in the second round, and 15 seconds later he dropped me. It was like a shock. I won the fight. I was undefeated in my first 6 pro fights, but it was never meant to be. It was funny because I always tell one time when I was getting ready to go to Europe on a U.S. trip, U.S. national team. And Kevin Kelly was with me. We had just fought in the tournament that we both won. I forget. It might have been the Spanish gloves. And Kevin Kelly says to me, Ricardo, you have a lot of talent. You have a lot of talent, but there's something missing. I don't know what it is, but I can't pinpoint what it is, but there's something missing. And it felt to me like someone had just told you the truth. I was initially, and this is me thinking back. I was like, man, there's nothing missing, whatever. But deep inside, I knew there was something. I came to find out what that was later. My family was always anti-boxing. They're gonna smash your brain, do this and that. I think I was always deep inside. I was always cognizant of the potential dangers of the sport, and I did not want to be someone who was dragging, walking on my heels or slurring my speech. I always wanted to have an opportunity to do something after my boxing days were over. So I think that I was never really over that line of fire when fighters say, you have to kill me to beat me. I was not me. That was not me. If I didn't get you with my skills, I was not going to die for it. And I love boxing, but I not enough to give my life. So
yeah.
But yeah, fighting in shows where not just fighting in shows where there were big cards, but fighting guys like Pernell Whitaker, sparring with them, with Pernell Whitaker, going to training camp with him.
How was it to spar with Pernell Whitaker? Was he hittable or what?
So I did really well. So I was there, and George Benton was there, and actually, Ronnie Shields.
Frank knows Georgie Benton very well, but Frank was a former fighter for Joe Frazier's gym in Philadelphia.
George Benton was amazing. I think he was amazing. So he was more he was focused obviously on his charge, was his Pernell Whitaker, but Ronnie Shields was an up and coming trainer at the time, and he was my trainer. And Lou Dua will come and he would say a few words, walk around the gym, but I did really well with Pernell to the point where he wouldn't shake gloves with me, and I was like, wow, here I am, an amateur. I mean, just turning pro, right?
Can I say something about that?
Uh-huh.
Can I ask you a question? You said that you did well with Pernell, correct?
Uh-huh.
I'm going to say the reason for that was because you didn't try to kill him and take his head off.
You think so? Yeah. So that was the type of guy he was, right?
No, that you didn't do that when you boxed him.
Uh-huh.
Because that's how you have success. The guy that tried to take his head off, he ate up. But if you were a little bit more measured and deliberate, you could stay with him a little better. And I'm assuming that's probably how you approached it.
So I'm not sure. I think I don't think that was not in my head. I don't think I would just want to do well. So the thing was that main events at the time said, we're going to send you down to Virginia Beach to spar with Pernell, and then we're going to get you a fight. And if you impress us, we'll sign you. So obviously I go down there. I want to impress, right? I think that I did well. I was talented, so I did well on my own merit. And
Excuse me.
he actually was a little bit annoyed, and he would never like shake gloves with me because, and I saw him spar with other guys. He would he would go tap gloves. With me, he didn't. I did well, and I think I don't know. I just happened to do well. He didn't like it. He was, he was not very friendly, and but I was there for about a month, and then Lou Duba, who was basically, at the time he had all the '84 Olympians basically. I was with a guy by the name of Mark Randazzo. I'm not sure if you remember. He was a prospect at one point, Mark Randazzo, and also with Edgerton Marcus, who was the silver medalist from the '88 Olympics. So it was the three of us. We had to drive Lou Duba's car all the way from Virginia Beach to Atlantic City to fight. Meanwhile, Lou Duba he flew. He was.
I love Lou Duba, by the way. One of my favorites.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was a great experience actually. So I came back. I fought a guy from Mexico that lived in Newark. I beat him up. I thought I looked good. My manager was there, and he was like, I kept approaching him. Hey, did they talk? Did they say anything with you? And I was like, he was like, no, I haven't said anything with me. So I stayed because Mark Breland was fighting the next day. I think he was, I forget who he was fighting. He was defending his welterweight title. So I stayed because I seen him at Gleason. So I got sort of friendly with him, and I stayed for the fight. And the next day, I during the fight, right before I went to the dressing room to wish him good luck, and Lou Duba approaches me and he says, "Hey, did you like Virginia Beach?" I said, "Yeah, I loved it. It was great." I said, well, "Okay, well, you like to move there? We like to there, set everything there, and we give you stay there, And I was like, "Oh, that would be great." I said, "But have you talked to Mike?" And he says, "I haven't spoken to him, but I will." I said, "Okay, great." So then I saw Mike. He was there at the fights with me. With his wife was there as well. And I said, "I spoke to Lou came to me and he said that he's going to speak with you." The whole show came and went. He never spoke with Mike, my manager. And then I ran into him again at the end of the show. And I say, so he says to me, "So are you coming? Yes or no?" And I said, "Well, did you speak to Mike?" He said, "Mike's got nothing to do with this. Are you coming? Yes or no?"
I knew that's where it was going.
And I said, "I don't operate that way. I'm sorry,
Wow.
And I walked away. It never happened. So I could have
Good
signed
for you.
Maybe my career would have gone a different way. Who knows, But it didn't.
I guess I was friendly with Lou on a personal basis, so it was never business per se. But yeah, that's some story. The one of your losses, and I guess you maybe had checked out. I was at that time we didn't have the internet and all that. It was in Melville, Long Island, at the Huntington Hilton Hotel. I think I was maybe the only media guy there, the only guy reporting on it.
Well, who the broadcaster? It was broadcast on some local channel. You know who the broadcaster was, right?
Was that Randy?
No, it was Teddy Atlas. He was an apprentice at the time. He was basically doing shows. And
he was right that, yeah. But so I covered that for Boxing News. It didn't look like you had a particular strategy. You would periodically attack this and that, and Jake would con you out of rounds. He was a masterful boxer, Jake Rodriguez. He not only beat Charles Murray for the junior welterweight title, but he made 2 successful defenses.
Yeah.
And then lost to Costa Zoo, his title eventually. But at that point, it looked like you're checked out. But look, no disgrace losing, to a champion like Jake Rodriguez by decision there. And I think you're in a good side of the line when you retired. You certainly didn't stick around too long,
Right.
You had enough of a vision and knowing you didn't have the hunger, but you manage guys now, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Tell us about who you're handling.
So, right now, I just had one of the guys that I represent. He just won the IBF North American flyweight title. That's Anthony Johns. He's 12-1 with 6 knockouts, and also a Dominican woman by the name of Claribel Mena. She's number 10 in the IBF. I'm working. I don't have a signed agreement with him, but I work with the team, and it's Khalid Twaiti, right? He's out of New York, out of Brooklyn, and I also represent the former world champion. Who I represented Argenis Mendes, so it's a former world champion. But he's retired now, but I'm representing his younger brother, who's now 4-0. He's about to be 5-0 this week, God willing. You know, he fights on the 18 in the Dominican Republic, and then he fights back again there. So I'm hoping that by the end of October, he's 6-0. So we had meant one fight every other month, and that was the plan. So we're right on target for that. And I also I'm working with a young woman from Italy. Her name is Sarah Bellotti. She's 7-0 from knockouts. She is in the process of getting her visa renewed. So I'm working with the attorney to get that done.
There's a loyalty part of it enter your mind. You have to think about it. You just gave a case where you were loyal to your manager, okay, at the time.
Mm-hmm.
These fighters, it's safe to say not every single one of them is going to be loyal to you. Mm-hmm. Maybe most of them will be, maybe none of them will be, maybe one or two will be, but how much of a problem is that, you know, the loyalty aspect?
Oh my, I have had problems with two fighters that I represented, you know, and that one of them was Steve Molitor, who basically through my guidance became a world champion. But when I did that, when I brought him to the title, and here's the thing, that the ironic thing is that I fought him and his management because I was not his manager. I had a promotional agreement with him. I fought with his team so that they would do the right thing, which is what so being in boxing and being an insider, I knew things that they didn't know, that they weren't aware of. For once, at that time it was Israel Vasquez was the IBF champion, and right. He was also the WBC champion. And I had spoken with his manager about it, and he had told me that under no circumstances would they give Steve Molitor an opportunity. He was too dangerous, right? I knew this from him, so I knew that when the fight went to a purse bid, and I knew that so Saquon placed the bid, the only bid for the fight. And it was a measly $25,000, right? So that meant that as the leading available contender, not the number one contender, he was number 3. Number 1 and 2 were vacant. I knew that represented only 15% of the purse for Steve. So 25,000, that's 50% would have been $3,750, right? So when I brought this to the team, they said, "We're not fighting for the world title for that type of money." I said, "That's not going to happen." I said, "That's not going to happen. The fight is not going to happen. This is they're bidding because they're under the rules. If you turn down the fight, they have the right to go down to the next challenger." And I said, "We're not going to allow them to do that. So we're going to say yes, even if it represents $3,750. That fight is not going to happen. He's going to vacate the title. He has a WBC title, and he's already has another match in the works. I think it was Oscar Larios. That was a fight with Oscar Larios, right? That fight was almost made." And they basically I had to basically fight them every step of the way. And I said, they're not gonna fight us. We're gonna end up fighting for the vacant title. And that's what ended up happening. But despite all of my work and trying to fight them, ultimately when he won the title against Michael Hunter in England, they decided that they wanted to restructure the deal and basically make me a minority partner. And I said, that's not what you signed. When I said to you, give me 2 years to get the job done, I did it in less than a year, and now you're punishing me because I deliver faster than I said. So it became, it's funny because years later, ultimately I had to drop the lawsuit. It was too costly because I sued them in Canada. I was supposed to place a bond every round that we went to court.
Yeah.
So I walked away, but 7 years later, I ran into Steve in Montreal for the IBF convention, and he apologized for everything that had happened. So 7 years too late to apologize, but yeah, that's what it was. And the other one was Agapito Sanchez. Agapito Sanchez, I represented. He was a former world champion. He K2,
that's another name that people are even more familiar with now. Didn't you have some dealings with Edgar Berlanga?
Yes, I did. That's another situation. You know, you help people, you know, thinking that they're going to do the right thing. But, you know, not only that, but not just me, but one of my best friends was brought onto the team to be a strength and conditioning coach. And he did it for free, you know, all under the promise that he was going to take care of him. And ultimately, once, you know, money showed up at the door, he turned the other way. And it was like, like we didn't exist, you know, so it happens all the time. And it's unfortunate because you do things expecting the best in people, you know, but it's, you know, you have to have the paper. That's why I always tell people, you have to find guys, you have to have everything, you know, done right, because
we only have a couple of minutes now. You being obviously very familiar with Newark, you're in charge of tourism. Shakur Stevenson is from Newark. How popular is he in Newark, his own hometown?
So I'll tell you that because I was, as the leader of tourism in Newark, I was the one that started lobbying to get him into Newark. You know, I was knocking at the door at Top Ranks every day, bring him to Newark, until we finally won. But
they fought at the Prudential Center in Newark, where the New Jersey Devils play in the NHL.
Right. So to make that happen, obviously, you know, the tourism bureaus around the country and around the world, they give a lot of incentives for event producers to bring events, right? So we were very instrumental. We sponsor press conferences. We underwrote hotel bills, you know, transportation. We helped and every aspect that was needed to basically put on a promotion. We always were, you know, we always had a role to play. And that's one of my, you know, when I left the tourism office, that was one of my proudest moments, that we were able to get him 4 times. Since 2019, we got him to fight 4 times. And, you know, it was a great experience. You working with Top Rank has always been very professional. You know, they are, you know, solid promoters. And so working with them was a positive thing always.
We're pretty much running out of time. I wish I told you to come on a little earlier, because some real fascinating stuff, you know, and you have a lot of great stories to share. So we'd like to have you on another time, but we only have a couple of minutes left.
Great.
So Ricardo Salazar, I don't know how to exactly describe your position, all-around boxing man. Maybe that's the way to do it, all-around boxing man. Ricardo Salazar. Okay. Good.
Thanks for coming on, Ricardo, and best of luck to you.
Jack, you know, I appreciate the opportunity.
And if you really want to get them on in a future time, get in touch with me and we'll work it out. We'll want to give you guys a plug.
Yeah, I would love to bring one of the guys, you know, one of the fighters, Anthony.
Absolutely. Get in touch
with Newark. So
get in touch with me. And absolutely. We'll definitely make it work.
Thank you.
Okay. All the best. Thanks for coming on.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Okay, everyone. We have a couple of minutes left, Frank. Anything closing? This weekend, I think Diego Pacheco fights doesn't get me excited, but I am a little excited about July 25th because of the amount of activity. You know, Joshua
there's some fights on there.
Benson Sue. Listen, it's a fight with negativity, but it's interesting because you don't know who's going to win. I mean, one guy is a shot fighter, the other guy's not a good fighter, an overrated fighter, not really a good one. So who knows?
The stories that Ricardo just told us, Jack, we both knew where they were going, and it's just a shame that is part and parcel of this business.
It is, but listen, isn't that life? Sometimes a lack of loyalty. It's happened to me in boxing. Frank, it's happened to me in boxing, where I've helped people. Some of them are very loyal. Most are loyal. But I remember one guy in particular, I don't have any ill feelings towards him now. I really got over it. And he eventually told me he appreciated all I did for him. But he wasn't even in the sport, and I got him involved. And then, you know, he took it for granted, you know, and it's happened to me on numerous occasions. But, yeah, you kind of get over it, you move on, and you want to know something, and then the people who you help, they come full circle sometimes, and they do remember how you helped them. Yeah, so it's what it is.
But I don't like when they screw you out of money, like
That's
happened there
different.
too.
Yeah. Yep.
And you
Okay,
need that, and like you said, you need that in writing, and then sometimes that doesn't even do anything.
Yeah. So,
All right,
it is.
Jack, I don't feel good.
Okay.
I gotta run.
Okay, Frank. See you next week. All
We'll
the
talk
best to
next week.
everyone out there.